you'll learn today is all about what an eval actually is, why judging AI by feel, vibes, whatever you want to call it, is wrong. I'm not here to die on that hill, but I think it's good to understand that because you go on Twitter and people are like, oh, what do you think of this model, that model, the other model? And they're like, oh, we base it on vibes. Right on, good. Even the labs are telling us, hey, they base it on vibes. Cool. But there's another way, and that way is in addition to basing things on vibes. I've got 5 principles to share for evals, but I think broadly speaking, for testing whether AI can actually do a job, which is what evals are all about. And then last but not least, we'll also be sharing how to build an evals plan for your own work with a very specific example that you can abstract out and including with the principles and basically do this for your own work. So my goal today is to help you understand evals as a non-engineer or with a non-engineering mindset, even if you are an engineer, so you can use them for more things than what historically folks have used them for, which is to improve a product. All right. So what is an eval? What an eval actually is. So as I was saying earlier, most AI claims of like whatever that it works or whatever are just vibes. So you run something and you're like, oh, great, this looks about right, or AI can't do this, or AI is great at this. Even in a conversation just earlier today, like right before this, I was talking to someone that I work with, and I was like, hey, I really like this model better than any other model. And there was no evals run or anything like that, but I did say it. And then I didn't catch myself, but then that person had seen work output from that model versus the model they were using. And they were like, yeah, I get it. I was looking at what you were doing and the output you had. And I was like, oh, maybe I should try that model. And this is for like work, like regular work we were doing. I had given this person output a while ago, maybe a few days ago. And we were just talking about it today. I'm like, hey, I used this model to do that. And I thought the outputs were much better. But again, I did it on Vibe. So I'm kind of responsible for this problem myself. And we kind of tend to always do that. So I wanted to share that just to let you know how kind of all this generally works. And it's vibes or your impression or guessing. But the person I was talking to said, hey, I think that model did a better job. Okay, cool. Great. If this was something repetitive, we would have went straight into, okay, let's go use evals to actually more objectively evaluate both models. So actually, what is an eval? So an eval simply verifies if an AI can do a task and repeats it. So can it do it once and then can it do it again at the same level of quality output criteria that you have? That's basically what it is. So the goal of it, or the way the eval is supposed to work, is that you take what a good result looks like, and you literally do that before you actually even run the AI in most cases. So, for example, if you have a lot of stuff that you did back in the day or recently without AI, and you have all those outputs, whether it's emails you were sending or anything like that, what you would essentially do is use those, the great ones, the good ones, whatever. So if you're sending sales emails and a certain batch of them got a bunch of replies, that's a good result, or it led to closed deals, ideally. That's a good result. So that's what you're starting with, ideal. Then you basically set a pass or fail of like, what does pass or fail mean for that output? And then you score those outputs against it. So against what the AI is essentially producing. And then you just take the same task and run it again and again, and you measure it the same way. Maybe you can switch out, more advanced stuff and things like that, or switching out the models, trying it with different inputs and things like that. But at the end of the day, the output and the result and a good result is what you're essentially working backwards from with an eval. Okay, so what ends up happening when you do this is folks go from, I've got AI making these really well, kind of like the example I gave you earlier, to in blind reviews, the team rated the AI versions higher than the ones we shipped. Here are the files. So this is what we're really trying to get to. We're trying to get to objective results. And a lot of the time, one of the key ways, and I'm going to share how, is a blind review where you don't know whether it's AI or the original or whatever, and you're sort of picking and voting. That's basically what your goal is. You're trying to take an opinion to a repeatable result that's objective and put objective measures against it to know what good or ideally what great looks like. So here, how do you define that? So basically, the person using the AI is obviously responsible for how good it is. And there's really no tools that do that kind of judgment for you automatically. So all these things that you've built with AI today, you're basically the one that has to decide what good means. Now, I can get into rants about judgment and AI slop and the websites I see that I do not like because they look like someone built them with AI and all that. And then I bounce from them and all that. But that is poor judgment. If you do a bunch of that or you're shipping like that, I'm talking about good judgment. So you do have to define what good looks like. That is a key piece of an eval. That's also why a lot of people might not be doing evals. But if you're in an organization or a company and you have repetitive processes, even if they're not engineering oriented or product oriented processes where you're trying to improve a product experience with AI, this is what you do to improve the work that AI is producing for you that maybe in the past AI did not do. So that's the key. So on this one, what I wanted to describe, and this is for anyone who's been here before or not, is basically the way I try to describe these things. So a skill really teaches an AI a task. So skills about single threaded tasks. A plugin is what you can use with tasks and MCPs, and it does an entire job. And then a loop lets you run the model until the work is done. I do like to caveat every time I talk about loops. Loops are not automated by nature. Loops are basically giving an AI an outcome and it running till it hits that outcome. Then it stops. If you want to automate a loop, you would run it on some kind of trigger. So just want to clarify that so everyone knows what I mean when I say loops. I do not mean an automation. And then last but not least, why I say this is a missing piece, the eval actually tells you if any of this stuff is actually working towards what that output, what great looks like for you. So that's the key there. All right. So I promised I'd share some principles, and then I'm going to actually go through one specific example of building an evals plan that you can then take with these principles. So I'm going to actually build that plan with these principles. But first, we should probably talk about the principles. Okay. So one of the key things is you want to start from the outcome, not the tool. A lot of times, like in work land, we start with, oh, what tool should we use? No. Let's start with what outcome we're looking for. And anyone that's been in Classic trying to procure tools and things like that knows this problem. We should always start with the outcome. What are we trying to do here? Not, hey, let's go use this tool or that tool or the other tool. And again, this is just, general good practices, but that's really key when you do evals. So as I was saying, you want to decide what good or great looks like. I know I keep slipping between good and great. I usually use great, but good is sometimes good enough. And then you do pass or fail. So you basically want to be able to line all this up front and be able to pick and have this sort of pass or fail for good and bad results and things like that. So it's really important to kind of codify that. And I'll talk more about that for sure. And then any hard requirements like nothing made up and all that, those are kind of other things that are really important when you're setting this up. And then you also want to, in an ideal world, write down what doesn't matter. Because a lot of the times, and this is like the missing piece with evals and a lot of other things. And again, I've run evals in the traditional way with Brain Trust and other tools and things like that, or made our own tools. And so one of the key things is knowing what you're also ignoring, because otherwise you can add a lot of noise into the system. So remember, start from the outcome, not the tool, and make sure you're showing what good results look like and are doing pass or fail lines as well. Okay. What you next want to do is you want to benchmark against what you already shipped. And this is my example of, when I talked about a sales email, if you had a great sales email led to closed deals, that's essentially real work. And then you want to use that data as performance data that you already have on the work. So that data should be all passing for the work that you're doing and the examples that you have. And then what you want to do is try to figure out if you have any versions of those things that are ones that have already been rejected. So this would be more fails and things like that. So if something didn't lead to any calls or any demo requests or any revenue, that's probably a good example of what not to do, right? So that's good for this kind of eval stuff as well. Yeah, and this whole idea of better than what we ship beats seems good every time. And I say that because we're judging a lot of things at work sort of subjectively. And so when we use AI, we have to actually turn that into objective judgments. And that's really what evals help you do. And then you want to test on fresh cases. So this is like running it on new input. So in the sales example, you would give it basically the targeting you normally give a human or even AI and all that. And then you want to basically take those inputs and then basically see what the AI does. And ideally, it's inputs that haven't been seen before in a super ideal world. Which, if you're doing new things all the time, in this sales case, it would be the context you're providing to be able to create the email. And then you want to keep adding more test cases as you go, and so that the agent has more context. And so here's an example in here. I think that will give you a good example of kind of what that looks like in practice. Okay. And then what you want to do is you want to automate the objective checks, and then you want to use people for taste. So some checks are binary. So that's a yes, no, like I was saying, accuracy, formatting, words that were used, things like that. Nothing being made up. So that's like fact checking. And that's a simple yes or no. So you want AI to check those itself. And it's usually going to be better and quicker than you. So the more you can get into a yes, no binary format, the better. And of course, AI can help you with all this, but that's an important piece of the puzzle. And then quality ends up being a taste call. So the way to do that, and when we're doing evals, we always do this, is basically use blind human comparisons. So it means that you'd show two options or multiple options and have humans pick which one's better without knowing which one was AI, which one wasn't. And that's kind of the effort that needs to be put in. And if you're thinking about this in the context that I'm trying to share it with you and talk about, we're not talking about building a product and running evals on it. We're talking about things that are work processes that we're trying to get AI to repeat in a really good way. And that's why it's really important to basically have human versions of this. And it's a good assumption to say that we can find human versions of this or already have them, because this is work that we're trying to automate with AI or turn into an actual agentic workflow. Okay. Then obviously you want to bundle all of this so anyone can rerun it. And if you've, been at some of my other sessions, you know how to create skills and, know how plugins fit into this puzzle and all that. If not, you can go to heaton.com/library and find all that stuff once you put in your email, if you haven't already, but everyone that's here has. That's great. And you'll be able to see like how to do some of this stuff. I'm also going to talk about it in a second, but I really wanted to make sure you are kind of aware of that. And I have all the kind of instructions for all that too. And then the idea is that anyone should be able to reach the same conclusion from your folder of the evals that you ran. And this is a very typical process, even when you're building product, where you package up those evals and find a way to assess them. And yes, there is human assessment and all that involved. Okay, so now moving to the next section. This section's all about basically building the evals plan, and we're going to talk about it from the perspective of a very specific example. So the sort of idea here is that we basically made up a company and made up the one job we want AI to do. So that's how we set up this example for you. But this can apply to any job that you want done. But I wanted to go through those 5 principles in practice so you actually see an example of how to use these principles. So basically at the end, you'll have a plan that you could hand off to a teammate so they can see it too. So here, it's a demo company. It's got an AI task. Let's say it's a B2B SaaS project management tool like a Basecamp or Asana or something like that. And customer success reps are essentially drafting the emails for a contract expiry. And there's a bunch of stuff each one needs to do. It needs to reference the account's usage. It can't feel templated. It has to be personable. And then it can go wrong with wrong numbers or an email that's impersonal. So we also talked about how it can go wrong. So this is kind of a way to scope a task for AI. Okay. So number one, you want to start from the outcome, not the tool. So the first thing you want to do is sort of define your pass or fail kind of line. And you want to write it out in a note or a document. This is a deliberate thing. This is what you should do. Excuse me. So in this case, it's like basically pass or fail line for these AI generated renewal emails is picked as equal or better in at least half of blind comparisons versus human generated outputs. No invented or stale data and information used in these outputs. So this is kind of what you're just trying to explain. And the reason for that is that this will help you as you go forward because you're now focused on outcome, not tool. That's the key here. Okay. Then, and this is where it gets fun. And the prompts are literally here, but so you can read them. But basically, the idea is that you want to gather human generated outputs and you want to find the patterns so the AI can reference and measure against them. So this is what I meant by you don't have to do the pass fail yourself. You can actually use AI to do it, but obviously, please read the output. So you want to use those findings to create a skill to make this task of even assessment repeatable. So I'll repeat that again. So you're taking human generated outputs and you're having AI find the patterns so that AI can reference and measure against them. And then you basically get this lovely output most of the time, and you're able to use it to basically make this. You want to use it to make the task repeatable because you're probably going to have more emails to show later and things like that. And so the things that found in this example are like consistencies or structure for the AI model to follow, variations in content depending on the client case, and then any inconsistencies or things that could be flagged. And with the models where they're at today, they do a very good job of this at this point, at least in my experience. Okay, so then as you kind of do that, you basically are wanting to use that information, as I mentioned, to create a skill. Then you want to run that skill on a new case. So then you give it another email, human generated output ideally, but any kind of email actually, and then you go run the skill on it. And that's kind of a new case. And it's assessing, the whole idea is to assess that new case based on the skill that you just built. Cool. So I think you can see how the things I've been sort of explaining and teaching in previous sessions stack here and why all this sort of comes together. So from there, you want to basically test the fresh cases at volume. And AI will give you the output. You can see that happened, and it gives you kind of a judgment call around all of it, and gives you kind of that output. So the goal here is basically to take the skill and run it on a full-on larger data set. Okay, then because we need to do the objective checks and use people for taste, you want to create an eval skill that actually checks the accuracy and validity of the AI generated outputs. So you're basically telling it to make you that skill. This is the exact prompt. And you basically then get an output like this, where it gives you the pass and fail and any warnings and things like that. So this is a very clear example of what passed, what failed, what went wrong, all that kind of stuff, kind of in a neat little package. Okay, so then as a next piece of step 4 or principle 4, you basically want to create a tool for human testers to essentially blind rate both the AI and human outputs to see if the outputs are actually good. So this is the pass or fail, right? And you can do ratings on the stars and things like that, but this is the actual prompt that we gave it to basically produce this sort of HTML little thing. This is actually their output once the review is complete. But this is the kind of thing that you are going to build that's kind of interactive, where people can rate the AI and the human outputs without knowing which one's which. And then you use those results as part of kind of the inputs for kind of the next step too. Okay. So then basically what you do is you want to basically bundle the entire thing so anyone can rerun it. So you basically want the model, because this all can happen in a single chat, and it should, to package everything relevant into a folder. So now it can be used by you or your team in the future. So you can essentially be able to assess the same exact thing again when you kind of have more emails or a different thing to do. But the same process can be used. So in basically what we did with these 5 principles is in a single chat, gave the AI our own outputs, had it help us define what great looks like, actually, except that those outputs were great in the first place. But then we had it define it and keep going down. And then we even created the ability at the end of this to do a blind review and built a tool to basically do that. So the whole purpose of this entire thing is for everyone, including the AI, to understand what good and bad looks like and include human judgment in it and be able to run these evals anytime. And this is how we make AI actually codify things that historically were probably more objective and weren't as codified. So that's kind of the key thing. And that's basically the core of how to run evals just in a single chat. Use these principles and get to a place where you have taken some outputs, codified it, and then are able to create something where humans can judge it as well. And then with that judgment, you can pour that judgment back in whenever you want and try to improve the outputs AI is doing. But this is the basics of evals and how to do it. Again, evals get into a lot of other territories, but this is the type of process that is on the intermediate to advanced level without being an engineer that a lot of people should be running when they have repetitive things that they want AI to do, and they have outputs that are done by humans Or even honestly, you could do outputs and do ones done by AI if they're great. So I'm not saying they have to be human, but they have to be great. And that judgment is on you. And so if you have great examples, then you're evaluating it. If you have bad examples, you're using that to help shape how you think about that. So I do love my flowcharts. So I'm going to walk through uh, this kind of flowchart to help explain and give an answer to this question. I got also one more flowchart, and then we'll get into the questions and whatnot. But basically, is good written down as a pass or fail line? That's the big question because the pass or fail line is really important. And then from there, if it's not, you want to define it before anything runs, plus any other hardware requirements. So that's going back to principle one. And then do you have real examples to compare against? Would be the next kind of problem to solve. Okay. No? Well, go get them. Yes? Cool. Are you testing on cases that AI hasn't seen? See, that's kind of important. And so if the answer is no, then you want fresh inputs that AI has not seen yet. And then you're basically ready to run the task and do the eval. And then next flowchart, this one's really important, is can you trust the result? So does a check have the right answer? And if the answer is no, then that's kind of something where you want to do a blind human comparison because where nobody knows which is which. So you can start assessing it. And if the answer is yes, the check does have the right answer, then you're going to, okay, automate it, let AI verify facts and format. And then you're really trying to figure out, can a teammate rerun this and reach the same conclusion? Because that's really part of the whole process of an eval, right? So the idea would be if it's no, then you want to package it up, date it, methods guild, all that, and done. And then if the answer is yes, then it's a result you can defend. So I think that one line, a result you can defend, is actually what a lot of this works backward from. And so if you want to know what that means, that's literally like we're trying to get AI to have outputs that we can objectively say are good and evaluate them to determine if they're good or not. So that's really where a result you can defend. So many times I do this and the results are just bad. AI is not able to produce the outputs that we're looking for, right? And so then you go back to the drawing board and try to figure out, okay, is it the input? Is it the prompting? What is it that would improve this? And you try to go do that and then go through this kind of run again and try to get to essentially a result you can defend, which essentially means it's a good, if not great, result. Okay, so what to do today? So today, what you can do is you can pick one task you already trust AI with. You can write down what good looks like before the next run of it, and you can score the next three outputs against it and see if that trust actually holds in terms of the AI continuously doing it. And this is the way to take one person's output that's great and actually make it repeatable by evaluating whether AI can repeat it or not and make it great. And that's why the blind tests and stuff like that is really important because then you can judge the AI and the human output really well.